Captain Lee Hanna stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship moved slowly through space, patrolling the quiet border between human territory and Karani space. She had been doing this job for 3 years now, and every day still amazed her. The Karani were unlike any other species humanity had ever met. They looked like living crystals, tall and graceful, with bodies that seemed to catch and reflect light in beautiful ways. But the most wonderful thing about them was their music. They didn't speak with words like humans did. Instead, they sang to each other in harmonies so perfect that listening to them made humans cry with joy. 50 years ago, when humanity had just learned how to travel faster than light, they had been lost and confused in the galaxy. Their first attempts at exploring space had been disasters. Ships got lost, colonies failed, and many people died because humans simply didn't understand how to live among the stars. Then they met the Karani. The crystal beings had found a human ship drifting in space, its crew nearly dead from system failures. Instead of ignoring the strange new species or treating them as enemies, the Karani had rescued them. They brought the humans to their homeworld, Theral Prime, and nursed them back to health. Elder Nethaval had been young then, but he was the first Karani to learn human language. He spent months with the rescued humans, teaching them about space travel and learning about human culture. When he finally spoke his first words in English, he had said, "We are friends now. Friends help friends reach the stars." That was how the greatest friendship in galactic history began. Lee Hanna smiled as she remembered her first visit to Theral Prime 5 years ago. The entire planet looked like it was made of living crystal. Tall spires reached toward the sky, all of them singing, in perfect harmony. The sound could be heard across the entire world, a song that never stopped and never repeated the same melody twice. The Karani had taught humans everything they needed to know about surviving in space. They shared their terraforming technology, which helped humans turn dead rocks into green worlds where families could live and grow. They showed humans how to navigate safely through hyperspace without getting lost in the dark between stars. Most importantly, they taught humans that not everyone in the galaxy was an enemy. Commander Park Day walked up to Lee Hanna, holding a data pad with the day's reports. "The morning patrol found nothing unusual," he said. "All shipping lanes are clear, and the Karani freighters are running on schedule." Lee Hanna nodded. The trade between humans and Karani had grown strong over the decades. Human factories made tools and machines that the Karani needed, while the Karani provided advanced materials and energy systems that made human technology much better. But more than trade, they shared knowledge, art, and friendship. Dr. Kim Sora was down in the ship's laboratory, working with a young Karani scientist named Velhan. They were studying new ways to grow plants in space, hoping to make space stations more comfortable for both species. Sora's daughter often played with Velhan's crystal offspring, their laughter mixing with harmonic chimes in a sound that always made the adults smile. "Captain," said Lieutenant Choi Min from his station, "we're receiving a transmission from Elder Nethaval." The main screen flickered to life, showing the familiar form of humanity's oldest alien friend. Elder Nethaval's crystal body had grown more complex over the years, with new geometric patterns that showed his wisdom. When he spoke, his voice was like music, but humans had learned to understand the words within the harmony. "Greetings, Captain Lee Hanna," the elder sang. "I bring troubling news from the Galactic Council meetings." Lee Hanna felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of trouble, Elder?" "The Velkorth hegemony grows bolder," Nethaval explained. "They claim that soft species like humans and Karani are weakening the galaxy. They say that only the strong should control the stars, and they consider themselves the strongest of all. The Velkorth were a militaristic empire that had been expanding aggressively for decades. They conquered other species and forced them to serve in their armies. Their philosophy was simple: might makes right, and the weak deserve to be enslaved. They have issued ultimatums," Nethaval continued. "They demand that both human and Karani space be open to their fleets. They want to establish military bases on our worlds and control our trade routes." Commander Park Day stepped forward. "And if we refuse?" Elder Nethval's harmonic voice carried a note of sadness. Then they threaten war. They believe that neither humans nor Karani have the strength to resist them. They think our friendship makes us weak. Lihana clenched her fists. The Velkorth didn't understand what they were dealing with. They saw the Karani's peaceful nature and humanity's willingness to cooperate, and they mistook these qualities for weakness. They had no idea that the bond between humans and Karani was stronger than any military alliance. What do the councils say? Lihana asked. Both the Human Assembly and the Karani Harmony Circle have rejected the ultimatums, Nethval replied. We will not surrender our freedom or betray our friendship. If the Velkorth want war, then we will face it together, as we have faced everything else for 50 years. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in thoughtful silence. War was coming, and everyone knew it. But as Lihana looked out at the stars, she felt no fear. Humanity and the Karani had built something beautiful together, and they would protect it with everything they had. The attack came at dawn on Thiril Prime, when the crystal cities were singing their morning harmonies. Captain Lihana was still 3 hours away in hyperspace, when the first Velkorth ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel above the Karani homeworld. The Velkorth had spent months preparing for this moment. Their scientists had studied Karani biology and discovered something terrible. The crystal beings didn't just look like living gems. Their entire life force was connected to harmonic vibrations. Every Karani was part of a vast song that connected them to their ancestors, their children, and each other across the galaxy. The Velkorth had built weapons specifically to destroy this connection. Elder Nethval was in the Great Harmony Chamber when the quantum disruptors began firing. The massive crystal spire that had sung for 10,000 years suddenly went silent. He felt the shockwave of broken harmonies crash through his consciousness, like a physical blow. All around him, other Karani began to scream, not with their voices but with discordant sounds that hurt to hear. The quantum disruptors didn't just kill Karani bodies. They shattered the crystal matrices that connected each individual to the great song of their species. When a Karani died naturally, they would sing their death song, a beautiful melody that carried their memories and love to join the eternal harmony of their ancestors. But these weapons prevented that final song. They destroyed the soul along with the body. Commander Park Day was monitoring communications from his ship near the human colony on Kepler 442b when the emergency signals started coming through. At first the messages were confused and panicked. Then they became desperate. Finally they stopped completely. Captain Lee, he called over the comm system. We're losing all contact with Thiril Prime. Something's wrong. Lihana pushed her, ship's engines harder than she ever had before. The Prometheus screamed through hyperspace, racing toward the Karani homeworld. She tried to raise Elder Nethval on the quantum communicator, but heard only static. She tried the Harmony Council, the Crystal Gardens, even the children's schools. Nothing. Dr. Kim Sora was in her laboratory when the ship's sensors began picking up the destruction. The readings made no sense at first. Where Thiril Prime should have been singing with the harmonies of 5 billion Karani, there was only silence. Not the quiet of sleep or rest, but the terrible emptiness of death. This can't be right, she whispered, checking her instruments again and again. The entire planet, the song is gone. When the Prometheus finally dropped out of hyperspace, Lihana saw a sight that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Thiril Prime hung in space like a broken jewel. The crystal cities that had reached toward the sky in perfect geometric beauty were now twisted wreckage. The orbital platforms where Karani artists had created their most beautiful works were drifting debris. But worst of all was the silence. For 50 years, any human ship that came near Thiril Prime could hear the planet singing, a sound so beautiful that many humans had called it the voice of God. Now there was nothing but the cold emptiness of space. Lieutenant Choi Min was the first to detect the single life sign. Deep in the ruins of the Great Harmony Chamber, Elder Nethval was still alive. Barely. The rescue team found him trapped under fallen crystal, his body cracked and dim. The patterns of light that had always danced through his crystalline form were fading, When he saw the humans, he tried to sing, but only harsh, broken sounds came out. "Elder," Lihanna knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "What happened? Who did this?" Nethival's voice was like shattered glass. "Velkorth. They came, with terrible weapons, not just killing and destroying the song itself. My people cannot reach the harmony now. Cannot join the ancestors." Dr. Kim Sora worked frantically with her medical equipment, but she knew there was nothing human science could do. The Elder wasn't just dying from his injuries. He was dying because his connection to the great song had been severed, and no Karani could live long without that harmony. "The children," Nethival whispered. "The colonies. They felt it when the homeworld died. They are dying too. The song is broken." Across the galaxy, in every human space station and colony where Karani lived and worked alongside humans, the crystal beings were collapsing. Without the central harmony of Thyral Prime to anchor them, they were losing the will to live. Parents watched helplessly as Karani children who had been laughing and playing just hours before began to fade like dying lights. Elder Nethival used his last strength to activate a data crystal. "For you," he told Lihanna, "our gift to humanity. The harmony must continue through you now." The crystal contained everything: the mathematical principles behind Karani technology, the secrets of their terraforming systems, even the harmonic equations that let them phase through solid matter. It was their most sacred knowledge, given freely in their final moments. "Tell our human friends." Nethival's voice grew weaker. "That friendship is stronger than death. The Velkorth think they have won, but they do not understand what they have awakened." Elder Nethival's light went out with those words. The last voice of Thyral Prime fell silent forever. Captain Lihanna held the data crystal and made a promise to her dead friend. The Velkorth thought they had eliminated a threat by destroying the gentle Karani. They had no idea that they had just turned humanity's greatest teachers into martyrs, and that the species known for making friends was about to show the galaxy what happened when you murdered their family. The news traveled through human space, faster than any ship could fly. Within hours of Captain Lihanna's report, every human colony, space station, and outpost knew what had happened to Thyral Prime. The Karani were gone. All of them, murdered by weapons designed specifically to destroy their souls. Dr. Yoon Jae was teaching quantum physics at the University of New Seoul when the emergency broadcast interrupted his lecture. The elderly professor watched the footage from Thyral Prime in stunned silence. His students began to cry as they saw the broken crystal cities where their Karani friends had lived and worked. "Class dismissed," Yoon Jae said quietly. Then he walked to his private office and began making phone calls. Within an hour, every major human scientist in the galaxy was part of an emergency conference. They had work to do. On Mars, Admiral Oh Sung was meeting with the Joint Chiefs when the news arrived. The military leaders sat in shocked silence as they watched the recordings of the dead Karani homeworld. These weren't just casualties of war. This was genocide, pure and simple. "Sir," said General Bei Huan, "the Velkorth have declared victory. They're claiming that they've eliminated a major threat to galactic stability." Oh Sung's face went hard as stone. "A threat? The Karani never hurt anyone in their entire history. They helped us reach the stars. They were our teachers, our friends, our family." The Admiral stood up and looked out at the red landscape of Mars. Somewhere out there, in the crystal gardens that Karani engineers had helped humans build, the remaining crystal beings were dying of grief. Their children were fading away because the song that gave their lives meaning had been silenced forever. "Send a message to every human fleet, every colony, every corporation," Osung ordered. "Total mobilization. Every resource we have goes to one purpose now, making the Velkorth pay for what they've done." Engineer Nam Hee was working on a space station orbiting Jupiter when she heard the news. She had been collaborating with a young Karani named Sil Than on a new type of energy converter. They had become close friends over the months, sharing stories about their families and dreams for the future. When the news came, Nam-hee ran to the Karani quarters, hoping to find Silthan still alive. She found her friend curled up in the corner, her crystal body growing dimmer by the hour. The harmonic resonance that had kept her connected to her people was gone. Silthan, Nam-hee knelt beside her friend. Please don't leave us. We need you. The dying Karani's voice was barely a whisper. The song is broken. Cannot live without the harmony. Then we'll make a new song, Nam-hee said fiercely. We'll find a way to bring your people back, I promise you. Silthan managed to touch Nam-hee's hand with one crystalline finger. Use the gift Elder Nethaval gave to your captain. Our knowledge can become your strength. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. In every place where humans and Karani had worked together, lived together, and become friends, the crystal beings were dying. And the humans who loved them were making the same promise. This would not go unanswered. The transformation of human society happened almost overnight. Corporations that had competed fiercely for decades suddenly began sharing resources and technology. Pirates who had spent years raiding shipping lanes volunteered to become privateers in the war effort. Artists stopped creating beauty and started creating propaganda that would unite humanity in righteous anger. Dr. Yoon Jae gathered the greatest minds in human science at a secret facility on Titan. They studied Elder Nethaval's final gift, the Tano, data crystal containing all of Karani knowledge, with desperate intensity. The mathematics were incredibly complex, but slowly they began to understand. Look at this, said Dr. Park So-young, pointing at a holographic display. The Karani didn't just use harmonic resonance for communication. They used it for everything, their technology, their medicine, even their weapons. Weapons? Asked Yoon Jae. The Karani were peaceful, they never fought anyone. Not weapons for killing, Park So-young explained. Weapons for creating. They could use harmonic vibrations to restructure matter at the quantum level. They could phase through solid objects, manipulate gravity, even bend space-time. Yoon Jae felt his heart racing. If we could weaponize this technology, we could do things the Velkorth never imagined possible, Park So-young finished. The work began immediately. Human engineers combined Karani harmonic technology with their own innovations. The results were beyond anything either species had achieved alone. Ships that could phase through solid matter, weapons that could strike from inside enemy vessels, defense systems that could bend space itself. But the most important change wasn't in technology, it was in humanity itself. The murder of the Karani had awakened something in the human spirit that had been sleeping since the ancient days on Earth. It was the same fury that had driven human tribes to fight to the death for their families, the same protective rage that made parents capable of impossible feats to save their children. The Velkorth had made a fatal mistake. They thought that destroying the Karani would eliminate a threat and leave humanity isolated and vulnerable. Instead, they had united humanity in a way that nothing else could have. Every human in the galaxy now had the same goal: to make the, murderers pay. Admiral Oh-sung addressed the combined human fleets from his flagship. They killed our teachers. They murdered our friends. They silenced songs that had been singing since before our species learned to speak. Now we're going to teach them what happens when you hurt humanity's family. The war was about to begin, and the Velkorth had no idea what was coming for them. The first Velkorth fleet to encounter humanity's new weapons didn't even see death coming. Admiral Kresh was commanding 12 heavy battleships in the Zerion system when human forces arrived. He watched his sensors with confusion as only 3 small human ships dropped out of hyperspace. 12 ships against 3? Kresh laughed to his officers. These humans are even more foolish than I thought. Open fire and end this quickly. The Velkorth cannons fired massive energy beams that should have destroyed the human vessels instantly. Instead, the beams passed harmlessly through the ships, as if they were ghosts. The human vessels had used Karani harmonic technology to phase shift, their matter making them untouchable by conventional weapons. What is this? Kresh demanded. But his question was answered when the human ship suddenly rematerialized inside his flagship's hull. Captain Lee Hanna stood on the bridge of her phased vessel, now occupying the same space as the Velkorth command center. "This is for Elder Nethaval," she said quietly, and activated the harmonic disruptors. The Velkorth battleship began to sing, not with joy like the Karani once had, but with the terrible harmony of metal tearing apart at the molecular level. The ship's hull restructured itself into geometric patterns that had no practical purpose, except to be beautiful and terrifying. It became a monument to the dead Karani, broadcasting their lost songs across space before finally exploding in a burst of crystalline light. The same fate met every ship in Kresh's fleet. Within minutes, 12 massive warships became 12 works of art floating in space, each one singing the death songs that the Karani had been denied. News of the defeat reached Velkorth High Command within hours. General Vorth stared at the recordings in disbelief. "How did they do this? Our intelligence said humans had primitive weapons technology." "The reports are incomplete, sir," his aide replied nervously. "But it appears they're using some form of matter-phasing technology. Our conventional weapons can't touch them when they activate these systems." Vorth slammed his fist on the table. "Then we adapt, double our fleet sizes, triple them if necessary. Humans are still just soft flesh and weak bones. Numbers will overwhelm them." But General Vorth didn't understand what he was facing. This wasn't the same humanity that had stumbled into space 50 years ago, confused and helpless. The murder of the Karani had awakened something ancient and terrible in the human spirit. The same fury that had once driven their ancestors to hunt mammoth with pointed sticks. The same protective rage that made them the most dangerous predators on their homeworld. Dr. Yoon Jae worked day and night in his laboratory, perfecting the weapons that would carry humanity's vengeance to every corner of Velkorth space. The harmonic technology stolen from his murdered friends had been integrated with human engineering in ways that created entirely new forms of warfare. "We can do more than just phase through their hulls," he explained to Admiral Oh Sung during a secure transmission. "We can phase their weapons out of their ships while leaving the crews alive to watch. We can restructure their armor into artistic patterns that tell the story of Karani civilization. We can make their own ships sing funeral songs for the friends they killed." Engineer Nam Hee had kept her promise to the dying Silthan. Working with the few surviving Karani, she had developed harmonic resonators that could recreate the lost songs of Thyral Prime. Every human weapon now carried these devices, ensuring that each victory would honor the memory of the crystal beings who had been silenced forever. The second major battle came at the Velkorth fortress world of Grimgor Prime. General Vorth himself commanded the defense, confident that his orbital defense platforms and planetary shields would stop any human attack. Commander Park Day led the assault with a fleet of 50 human ships. The Velkorth opened fire as soon as the humans appeared, filling space with enough energy to destroy a small moon. But the human vessels phased through the attacks like they were made of light. "Impossible!" Vorth screamed as he watched human ships materialize inside his defense platforms. But this time, the humans didn't destroy the stations immediately. Instead, they began to reshape them. Using harmonic manipulation, the human forces turned each defense platform into a massive crystal structure that looked exactly like the spires that had once graced Thyral Prime. The platforms began to sing, with the voices of dead Karani, their harmonies broadcast across the entire system. "They're not just defeating us," whispered one of Vorth's officers. "They're turning our own weapons into memorials for their friends." The planetary assault was even more devastating. Human ground forces didn't march across the surface like traditional armies. Instead, they phased through the planet's crust and attacked from underground, emerging inside Velkorth bunkers and command centers. But the most terrifying moment came when the humans demonstrated their new understanding of harmonic warfare. They didn't kill the Velkorth soldiers. Instead, they used resonance fields to make violence physically painful for the enemy troops, while amplifying their capacity for empathy and sorrow. For the first time in their species' history, Velkorth warriors began to feel genuine regret for their actions. They looked at the crystal monuments singing around them and understood, with terrible clarity, what they had destroyed when they murdered the Karani. Lieutenant Choi Min watched from his ship as Grimgor Prime surrendered without firing another shot. The planet's surface was now covered with singing crystal spires, each one a perfect replica of the structures that had once made Thyral Prime the most beautiful world in the galaxy. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Oh-sung, "the enemy is requesting terms of surrender." Oh-sung's voice was cold as space itself. "Tell them there are no terms. They wanted to see what happens when the strong prey on the weak. Now they're going to learn what happens when they kill humanity's family." The war ended not with the destruction of the Velkorth homeworld, but with its transformation. Admiral Oh-sung stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as human engineers worked across the surface of Veltar Prime. The planet that had once been the center of a brutal military empire was becoming something entirely different. Dr. Yoon Jae had perfected the harmonic resonance fields over the final months of the war. The technology didn't kill the Velkorth. Instead, it changed them at a fundamental level. The same aggressive impulses that had driven them to conquer and destroy other species now caused them physical pain. Meanwhile, their capacity for cooperation and empathy was amplified 100-fold. "It's working better than we hoped," reported Dr. Park So-young from the planet's surface. "The Velkorth aren't just surrendering, they're actively helping us rebuild what they destroyed. They can't stand the thought of causing any more harm." General Vorth, the same commander who had ordered the genocide of the Karani, now worked alongside human engineers to construct memorial gardens. The harmonic fields had awakened memories and emotions he had spent his entire life suppressing. For the first time, he understood what his people had stolen from the galaxy when they silenced the crystal cities of Thyral Prime. "I can hear them sometimes," he told Captain Lee Hanna with tears in his eyes. "In the wind through the crystal spires we're building. The Karani voices, singing the songs we took away. How do we live with what we've done?" Lee Hanna looked at the reformed Velkorth general with a mixture of pity and satisfaction. "You live by making sure it never happens again. You help us build something better." The transformation wasn't limited to the Velkorth homeworld. Across their former empire, human forces were establishing what they called harmony zones, areas where the resonance fields made violence impossible and cooperation inevitable. Former slave worlds became centers of art and learning. Military factories were converted to produce terraforming equipment and medical supplies. Engineer Nam Hee had kept working with the surviving Karani throughout the war, and now their combined efforts were producing miracles. On a human colony world called New Harmony, she stood in a vast greenhouse where Karani crystal seeds were growing into new forms of life. These weren't exactly the same as the original Karani. The new crystal beings incorporated human mathematical principles into their harmonic structures, creating hybrid songs that had never existed before. They were children of two species, carrying the memories of their murdered ancestors, while embracing a future that included both crystal and flesh. "Listen," whispered Silthan, the young Karani who had barely survived the genocide. Her crystal body was brighter now, fed by the new harmonies that Nam Hee's resonators produced. "Do you hear it? The song is different, but it's still beautiful." Nam He smiled as she listened to the hybrid harmony that filled the greenhouse. Human voices joined with crystal chimes, creating music that neither species could have made alone. It was sad and joyful at the same time, honoring the dead while celebrating new life. The political changes were equally dramatic. The old Galactic Council, which had failed to prevent the Karani genocide, was dissolved and replaced with the Harmony Assembly. The new government was built on principles that Elder Nethval had taught humanity decades ago. That friendship was stronger than fear, and that cooperation could overcome any challenge. Dr. Yoon Jae, now elderly but still brilliant, addressed the Assembly's first meeting. "We learned something terrible during this war. We learned that there are species in this galaxy who will destroy beauty simply because it exists. But we also learned something wonderful. We learned that love and friendship can become weapons more powerful than any army." The Harmony Accords became the foundation of galactic law. Any species that committed genocide would face the same fate as the Velkorth, not destruction, but transformation. Their aggressive impulses would be muted while their capacity for empathy was enhanced. They would spend the rest of their existence helping to repair the damage they had caused. On Earth, in the memorial garden where the first Karani had been, buried 50 years ago, Captain Lihana stood before a massive crystal spire that sang with 1,000 voices. She was an old woman now, her hair gray and her face lined with age, but her eyes still burned with the memory of her murdered friends. "We kept our promise, Elder Nathaval," she whispered to the singing crystal. "We made them pay for what they did to you. But more than that, we made sure no one will ever have to suffer the way your people did." The crystal spire's song changed slightly, as if responding to her words. In the harmony, Lihana could almost hear Elder Nethaval's voice, telling her that the friendship between humans and Karani had become something eternal, a bond that death itself could not break. Children played in the memorial garden now, human and hybrid Karani together, their laughter mixing with the crystal songs. They had never known a galaxy where might made right, where the strong preyed upon the weak. They had grown up in a universe where friendship was the greatest force of all. The war was over. The stars no longer burned with human fury, but with a new kind of light, the light of harmony itself spreading across the galaxy like a song that would never end. The Karani were gone, but their gift to humanity lived on in every note of music that filled the space between worlds. In saving their friend's memory, humanity had become the guardians of peace itself. And in the crystal gardens that now bloomed, on 1,000 worlds the eternal song continued, proof that some bonds once formed can never truly be broken.